What's up, everybody? Wherever you may be in life's journey, I am glad that I get to be here with you and that you are here on this earth. So this weekend's gospel reading is for anybody who has asked the question, God, what in the world are you doing in my life? Like, what are you up to right now in my life? I've been asking this question lately. The Beers family has just gone through a crazy life hurricane over the last 6 weeks, where we've had 2 rounds of flu move through our family. And my wife had a back injury, so she was kind of down and out for a while. I had a few speaking engagements, so I had to travel in the midst of all the sickness and all the craziness and everything. And at different times, I'd be up at like 3:30 in the morning with the infant, being like, God, what are you doing? Like what is going on, God? What's happening here? What are you up to? And the spiritual masters, like they answer those deeply personal questions with deeply personal answers to like their spiritual directees, the people that they're talking to. They can give context because they know and understand where somebody's at in their spiritual life, right? So they can give specific answers to it. And if you have a great spiritual director, there's a spiritual director or a great mentor can really speak into your situation in your life and put it in context and be like, well, God, maybe God's up to this. And other times in other seasons when it's not just, difficult, when it's not just like a level 3 hurricane like it is in my life, but it's a category 5 hurricane, or it's a tsunami in someone's life, right? You can't actually answer the question. Us earthly human beings, like we don't have a deeply personal answer to that question. We're not looking into the future and being like, well, I know exactly why God is doing this in your life. I know exactly what he's doing in your life and the purpose of all of these things. A lot of times when someone's facing like a real tidal wave in their life, all you can do is just, in your humanity, just sit with the person, just be with them, and be with them as they ask the question, like, what is God doing? And be like, I don't know, but I'm just going to be here with you. I'm just going to be here with you through the season. Well, the spiritual masters, they gave specific answers to the people that they were directly accompanying, but they also actually provide us with language for the seasons of unknown for the masses. For the masses, not only of their time, but of times that followed. And one of the ways that the spiritual masters would answer the question of like, what is God doing in your life? What is God doing in my life? Is that the spiritual masters would say, God is taking you. He's taking you on a journey from your lower self to your higher self. He's taking you from where you are right now to who you were made to be. That's what God's doing in your life. That's at least what he's inviting you to by allowing these hardships or these difficulties, or by asking you to operate in this particular way. He's trying to get you from point A to point B. And because it's God, and because God so respects our freedom, it comes in the form of an invitation. He doesn't force it. Right now, probably for the last 6 weeks or so, I've averaged 3 hours of sleep a night, and, my kids are struggling and they're sick, and it's really pressed on my patience. And God isn't forcing me to become more patient. I could actually become less patient through this experience. I could become a less engaged father through this experience. Instead, though, God invites. He's inviting me through these circumstances and through these challenges, these category 1 hurricane of life, to go from my lower self to closer to being my higher self. That is the invitation. That is, in some ways, what's happening, is that I'm experiencing this invitation. This Sunday's gospel, Jesus has like a dozen epic, challenging, tough sayings that are all invitations to go from the lower self to the higher self. In the language of the gospel, Jesus will say this Sunday, even sinners do that, right? Even in your lowest state, you do that. But you're not called to live out of your lowest state. You're called to live out of your higher state, right? So, for if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. So the lower self exclusively loves those who love them. The higher self loves those who love them and loves their enemies, does good to those who hate them, bless those who curse them, praise for those who mistreats them. That's you at your highest self. That's me operating out of my highest self. So I really invite you to take time and actually sit with each of these sayings of Jesus in the gospel. I mean, this is prime Luke's gospel of Jesus saying things that if you actually live them, if we actually took the yoke of the gospel upon our back and lived these things, it would be radically transforming. But they're all so hard, and there's so many of them, it can be like totally overwhelming. That's why it's good for you to sit with it and go through it all and just be like, God, inspire me with the one. Inspire me with the one invitation out of all of these things, out of all of these sayings that you're saying. Inspire me with the one invitation that you're asking me right now, in the present moment, in this life, to go from my lower self to my higher self. So you go through it all. You can be like, okay, how am I doing with my enemies? How am I doing with those who hate me? How am I doing with those who curse me, who mistreat me? How am I doing with the person who strikes me on a cheek? Is God calling me to be a lover of enemies, a good doer of deeds to those who hate me, somebody who blesses those who's cursing me, someone who prays for those who've been mistreating me, someone who turns the other cheek, who gives the clothes off of my back, who just gives to whoever is asking of me? Go through the list. Go through the list and wait for God to inspire you and to be like, yeah, this is the one. This is the one. I remember, I think it was 10 years ago now. It's this line here where Jesus says, and from the person who takes your cloak, do not withhold even your tunic. Give to everyone who asks of you, and from the one who takes what is yours, do not demand it back. And it was a really inspiring part of this gospel passage. And I was like, okay, God, okay, I'm in. I feel like you're inspiring me to do this. So give me a chance. Give me a chance to give somebody who needs it the clothes off my back. Give me a chance to do that. I made that prayer, and I don't know, maybe you're not like this, but maybe you are. I made that prayer and I kind of forgot about it. And then I was dating my wife at the time, and we went to a baseball game. And we're at this baseball game, and we're there, and we're hanging out, and outside of the stadium, and there's a bunch of homeless people, and my wife and I at that time had developed this practice. She really led on this. She was the one who came up with this idea. She's like, cash is a hard thing to give to people who are homeless. We don't want to feed an addiction, but we do want to feed their bellies. So she would carry with her, every time we would go into the city, she would carry with her gift certificates to specific restaurants that are in that area where they could go and get a sandwich and get warm and stuff. And so we're standing and talking with a particular homeless person. And my wife had this thing, she still kind of does it, where she gets really determined that that she's not going to get cold. And she always ends up getting cold when we go to outdoor things. And she's always like, no, I run warm. I'm not going to get cold. And early on in our relationship, I'd be like, okay, fine. I'm going to bring a sweatshirt though. And I would always end up not having a sweatshirt, and she would take it because she would get cold. So anyway, I was wearing this sweatshirt because this exact thing had taken place. Like, she was like, no, I'm going to be fine. I'm like, it's a late September night. It might get cold. And so anyway, we are talking to this homeless person, and I'm like, how are you doing? And he says, I'm really nervous because the temperature's supposed to drop into the 30s tonight. And I was like, you're really nervous about being too cold? And he's like, yeah, I haven't had a chance to get anything else. All I have is what's on my back. And he's in short sleeves and jeans. And it was like the prayer that I had made came rushing back to me. And it was like God saying, well, here's your chance. I've delivered it to you. It's yours. Go for it. And I was like, do you want my sweatshirt? And he was like, the one on your back? It's like, yeah. Do you want my sweatshirt? And he was like, I absolutely want your sweatshirt. And I took the sweatshirt off of my back and gave it to him. And he was stunned. Because as it says in Scripture this weekend, if you lend money to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners. It was like, give to people expecting nothing in return. There's no way that individual is ever going to be able to repay me that sweatshirt. And that's precisely the point. More than that, it was my favorite sweatshirt. I wore it all the time. It wasn't just any old sweatshirt. It was my favorite one. It was one I did not want to part with, which is the point. That moment of freedom after being like, yeah, I'm going to give you the clothes off my back. The freedom that emerged from that, it's hard for me to explain. There's not a situation. I've had other situations since then where I am totally free and I'm just like, oh, do you want my jacket? Like, do you want my jacket? Like, do you want my belt? Like, you're having to hold your pants up. Like, do you want my belt? Like, just being totally available to this person and being like, whatever I have, you can have. Whatever I have is yours. And how that is my highest self. Whatever I have is yours. Because nothing is mine. Everything is God's anyway. So if you need it more than me, then it's yours. Now, have I always operated out of that space? No. I wish the answer was yes, but no. But doing that, making that decision, following through on that prayer, unlocked a whole other level of who I am. It took me in that moment from my lower self to my higher self. And that's the power of this gospel. If you open yourself up to being like, okay, God is going to give me a chance to live this gospel passage. I don't know when, I don't know how, I just have to wait for it. And then when it comes, I got to rise to the occasion of it. Because when you do, you will move from your lower self to your higher self. And the same thing, the same logic applies to whatever is happening in your life right now, whatever challenges you're facing, or whatever goodness you're experiencing, and the gratitude that comes with that goodness. In both hard times and good times, if you're wondering, like, what is God doing? How is he making all this happen? Or what is God doing? Why is he asking me to endure all of this? In a way, the answer is the same. He's taking you from your lower self to your higher self. And may you go from your lower self to your higher self this week. May God bless you, and may you always remember you were made to do hard things.